Cities. 56.2% of the entire world population lives in them, a percentage that has grown exponentially in the last 70 years, as we can see on this graph made by Statista. The highest percentages are found in the Americas, with over 80% of people living in urban centers. In Europe, around 75%, and in Asia, 51%, with Africa being the only continent where this value is under half, and the majority of people still live in the countryside. But this doesn't happen in all African countries, and actually the city dominance doesn't happen in all European or American countries either, with a few exceptions. This map allows us to visualize the data differently. In red are countries where the majority of the population lives in cities, and in blue, countries where the majority of people live in rural areas. Although this data is from 2018, but it shouldn't have changed that much. The exodus from the countryside to the cities, or what some people call rural flight, mostly began in the times of the Industrial Revolution in Europe. Pre-industrial societies did not experience large migration to cities, especially due to the inability of cities to support large populations. There weren't enough jobs, the health conditions were low, there wasn't much safety, the food supply was also low, and this made people remain in the countryside. However, the Industrial Revolution removed many of these issues. Factories opened, creating jobs, health conditions, well, they slightly improved at the time, and food supplies became higher, with the industrialization reaching agriculture as well. The United Kingdom, for instance, went from having 20% of the population living in urban areas in 1800 to more than 70% by 1925. But while industrialization and modernization improved many of the conditions that kept people away from cities, these issues still remain today and are a cause of concern for many of their inhabitants. So in this video, we're going to look at a specific one of those, safety, and find out which the safest cities in the world are. It's important to point out that there isn't really a 100% right answer to this, and I'm using a specific source as a reference, the Safe Cities Index of 2021, published by The Economist, so keep critical thinking in mind and be aware that this information might not truly reflect the reality that each of these cities experiences. They take a look at 60 cities worldwide. Why these 60? Good question. I honestly couldn't find out the criteria. Lisbon, for instance, was only added in this year's version of the report. They have been expanding the number. It started with only 50 in 2015, and I think the point is selecting an increasingly larger group of major cities worldwide to provide an ever-growing image of how different cities compare throughout the world when it comes to safety, and comparing also the different continents that they belong to. Here's the way that they measure safety. They have an overall score from 0 to 100. The highest, the better. The way that this overall score is calculated is through 5 specific indicators of security: personal security, health security, environmental security, infrastructure security, and digital security. Usually each of them accounts for 20% of the overall score, but this year it was 18.8% for each, except health, which was now worth more, 25%. I'm sure you can all imagine why, considering what we've been going through for the past year and a half. The one we most associate with safety would probably be the personal security one, meaning, for instance, whether you can walk outside at night without being attacked or something like that. Although the other ones are also important, and each of them are evaluated from 0 to 102, here are the average scores of these 60 cities on each of those indicators. In personal security, 62.3, in health, 66.7, environmental, 68.5, infrastructure, 71.5, the highest, digital security, 61.7, with the overall safety average of cities worldwide being 66.1. So not that high. Before we keep going, a quick message from today's sponsor, Morning Brew. Morning Brew is one of, if not the most informative newsletter. They are essentially the modern version of the morning paper, a free daily newsletter from Monday to Sunday, which can get you up to speed on what is going on in the business world in just 5 minutes. Let's be honest, most people these days aren't turning on their TV to watch the news. They tend to be somewhat dense, repetitive, and even boring. And we rarely go to newspaper websites because everything is behind a paywall that just drives us away, making us less informed. Most mornings we end up aimlessly scrolling through social media for a while before getting up. But instead of that, or in addition to it, we can become a little more informed every day. And you do learn a lot from them, like on this week's newsletter when I learned that Apple has set the date for the release of the new iPhone, the iPhone 13, which is supposed to come out September 14th, which is exciting. And the best part is Morning Brew is completely free. Always. You just sign up, in 15 seconds and get it sent to your email every morning. So if you want to, there's really no reason not to sign up. Click the link in the description below to subscribe to Morning Brew today. Now back to the video. Let's take a look at the overall score, which is why you probably clicked on this video, and take a look at which, according to this index, are the safest cities in the world in 2021. The top safest cities are Copenhagen, Toronto, Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo, Amsterdam, Wellington, Hong Kong, and Melbourne tied in 8th place, and Stockholm. The index also divides the score into very high safety, 75 to 100, high safety, 50 to 75, medium, 25 to 50, and low, 0 to 25. Out of these 60 cities, 19 are very high, 32 high, 9 medium, and there are no low in the overall score. Right now you might be thinking, okay, what about the least safe? And well, I can't tell you that based on this index because they only use 60 major cities, not all of them. And while I think pretty much all of the major cities are here, not all of them are. Even saying that we can tell the safest from here is kind of debatable. For instance, Iceland is always seen as the safest country in the world, but Reykjavik isn't considered on this index. But not having the less major or less than major cities as part of the index, we definitely can tell which the least safe are. Also, while I understand that a city's security or safety is more than it being crime-free, I feel like something like this could be misleading. Like I said, when we think safest cities, most of us probably just think of personal safety, and some of these cities at the top of the index might not do great on that indicator, only being at the top because they have good results on the other ones, which are nonetheless also important. For instance, Frankfurt in Germany ranks 7th on personal safety, Lisbon in Portugal ranks 9th, but Frankfurt doesn't even make it into the top 10 overall score of the index, and Lisbon doesn't even make it into the top 20, being 28th. If we were to take only into account personal security, the safest cities would be Copenhagen, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Stockholm, Brussels, Paris, Wellington, Toronto, Lisbon, Madrid, Sydney, and Barcelona. But don't get me wrong, the other indicators of digital, health, environmental, and infrastructure security are also important and could arguably even be considered as personal safety too. So let's take a look at each indicator in more detail to understand which factors are taken into account for each of them and who does best in each. The factors taken into account for personal safety are the ones we most usually associate with safety in general. How much small crime there is, how much violent crime there is, the prevalence of organized crime, if there are terrorist or armed conflict threats, the levels of corruption, income equality, etc. We already saw the top ones for this indicator. Here they are again. Out of the 60, only 12 make it into the very high category, 34 in the high, and 14 in the medium. When it comes to health safety, the main factors are universal healthcare coverage, the quality of healthcare services, the number of beds and doctors per capita, access to safe and high quality food, the pandemic preparedness and mental health support, availability of emergency services, life expectancy, etc. After this past year and a half, we more than ever understand the need to be safe from a health perspective. So it makes sense that this year's report values this indicator more than the others, at least for now. The cities that did better here were Tokyo, Singapore, Hong Kong, Melbourne, Osaka, Seoul, Toronto, London, Barcelona, and Sydney. The other 4 in the very high category were San Francisco, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and New York. 39 others are in the high, and then 7 in the medium category. When it comes to the environmental security, the usage of sustainable energy, access to water, the quality of the water, air quality levels, urban forest cover, and waste generation are the main indicators. Those who do best here are Wellington, Toronto, Washington DC, Bogota, Milan, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Rio de Janeiro, Zurich, and Kuala Lumpur. These plus 15, so 25, are in the very high category, another 25 in the high, 9 in the medium, and this indicator is the only one with a city ranking in the low category, Kuwait City at 22 points only. When it comes to infrastructure, when I first saw this report, I thought infrastructure security would be the least important, but it actually includes some very important factors: road safety, pedestrian friendliness, disaster management, water infrastructure as well, transport availability, the power network, and the percentage of people who live in poor conditions or are homeless. Hong Kong gets the best results in Singapore. These two get the highest scores out of any of these cities in any of these indicators. Next is Copenhagen, Toronto, Tokyo, Stockholm, Osaka, Washington DC, Chicago, and Sydney are tied at number 9, and then New York. This is the indicator with the largest amount of cities in the very high category, 32, 21 in the high, and 7 in the medium. And finally, digital security, which evaluates our safety online, taking into account account privacy policies, awareness of digital threats, whether cities are smart cities, cybersecurity preparedness, the percentage of internet access in the population, the risk of cyber attacks, etc. While smart cities are important for modernization and development, I do somewhat question their role in safety, even in digital safety, but I'm not an expert on them or this topic. This map from the index shows us cities that have smart city plans either being applied now or projected for the next 5 years. Apparently, out of these 60 major cities, 59 are working towards this. Only 13 make it into the very high digital security. They are Sydney, Singapore, Copenhagen, Los Angeles, and San Francisco are tied at number 4. New York, Amsterdam, Melbourne, Wellington, Chicago, and Frankfurt are also tied at number 10. London and Dallas. 33 others are in the high and the remaining 14 in the medium category. This index also provides us with a comparison of average scores of these 5 indicators between regions of the world, but not by continents. They only compare Asia Pacific, Europe, the Middle East, and North America. Overall, Asia Pacific does best. In digital, North America is ahead. In health, Asia Pacific, and in infrastructure as well. Personal security is higher on average in Europe, while North American cities on this list lead in environmental safety. So, those are, very briefly and according to this index by The Economist, the safest cities in the world out of these selected 60 major cities, taking into account personal, health, environmental, digital, and infrastructure security, and all the factors each of these indicators takes into account. They list all of their sources, but they don't really describe the method in which each city was evaluated. I'm going to assume that it was a correct evaluation. But do you live in any of these 60 cities, and do you agree that your city is safe in these aspects? Let me know in the comments. Also, which main cities are missing from this index that they should add in the following year's reports? What is the city you live in like? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Let me know as well. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you want, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge.